Michelle sighed heavily as she looked out of the window at the unpleasant drizzle outside. It was the end of July, which should have been at least hot, if not clear and sunny. The girl turned to look at the round wall clock. The hands inexorably approached 6 in the morning, which meant it was time to leave the house to catch the bus. While she could hide under the rain from an umbrella, there was nowhere to hide from the greyness of her weekdays and her gloomy mood. Michelle took another sip of cold coffee and, quickly rinsing the cup, headed for the exit. The door creaked in one of the rooms, and then there was the sound of shuffling steps. "Michelle, are you leaving already?" Grandma asked her granddaughter, coming out into the corridor. The elderly woman squinted from sleep while buttoning her home dress, which Michelle had given her as a gift on her birthday last year. Mrs. Blount had long been retired and was busy with household chores. After the accident that happened to Michelle and Kevin's parents, Grandma immediately seemed to grow old at once, became ill frequently. "Yes, Granny, I'm almost gone," the girl replied from the hallway, already putting on her old leather jacket.
"Did you eat at least, or as usual?"
The old woman frowned, crossed her arms over her chest, and watched her granddaughter put on sneakers. "I ate, Grandma, honestly," the girl replied out of habit, thinking that calming her grandmother down is definitely a lie for. "Today we have a wedding at the hotel, a banquet for 100 people. Maybe I'll bring you and Kevin something tasty." The old woman just waved her hand as if to say, "Don't talk nonsense." Mrs. Blount was a woman of old-fashioned beliefs. She firmly believed that everything Michelle brought home from work, apart from her salary, was theft. Michelle just laughed in response and asked, "Well, the police won't come to us because of 2 sandwiches, will they?" Grandma just frowned, raising her eyebrows. Mrs. Blount used to work as an accountant in a kindergarten, where everything was strictly accounted for, and although she coped well with her work, once she crossed the retirement age, she was asked to give way to the young. She tried to find another job, but encountered a series of refusals. No one wanted to hire a woman of such venerable age, even with rich experience. The woman tried to help her small family by using various side jobs. But more nerve calls went away than money appeared in her wallet, and her granddaughter was categorically against these, as she called them exploits. Michelle ordered her grandmother to retire, as is customary for women of her age, and at 22, she took full financial responsibility for their family. "Don't forget that you don't need to take Kevin to kindergarten today. They are in quarantine because of chickenpox," the girl reminded her younger brother for the last time. "Don't wake him up, let him sleep." After receiving a kiss on the cheek and a customary farewell from her grandmother, the girl jumped into the dark entrance, then onto the wet street. She was sure that her deeply religious grandmother crossed her back with a cross when she went out the door. Michelle worked as a maid at a prestigious, incredibly popular hotel. It was not yet possible to apply for any other position, such as an administrator. To achieve this, special education in the hotel business sphere was required. It was this profession that the girl tried to get by studying part-time. In secret, the girl dreamed of opening her own cozy hotel, one in which she could work and live with her grandmother and Kevin instead of their old 2-room apartment. Michelle was satisfied with her job. First and foremost, of course, the high salary was pleasing, and the hotel guests were wealthy people who often left generous tips for the young maid. Politicians stayed here, businessmen arranged conferences, celebrities were here, or famous people with unknown mistresses and lovers were lurking. The last ones always left more tips than anyone else, probably as a payment for silence. In addition, Michelle appreciated the convenient schedule and the possibility of substituting for other girls in emergencies. However, the job was tough, and every penny had to be earned through physical and moral labor. Not all guests were friendly, nor was all the staff responsive. It was here that Michelle's iron nerves came in handy, along with her good-natured character, which allowed her to remain calm in particularly unpleasant situations. For example, the situation with the ubiquitous manager Greg Miller was one such case. He wandered around the hotel like an unbridled flea, trying to bite Michelle as hard as he could. And now, as soon as the girl crossed the threshold of the common dressing room, he quickly entered. "Good morning, Michelle," Mr. Miller almost sang, passing by the girl and lightly, amicably touching her back. However, this movement momentarily froze the girl, who was standing by her locker. "Hello, Mr. Miller," she muttered. "Why so formal? We're alone here," the boss ambiguously replied. "Change into your uniform quickly. The working day is about to begin. I don't want to dismiss you, although sometimes I do." The man chuckled unpleasantly. At the same time, he pretended to be looking for something in his locker. There was no doubt about it. He came here purposefully to watch the maid. Michelle gritted her teeth, clenching them tightly so as not to let a harsh word slip out towards her boss. And there was plenty to swear about. From the first day of their acquaintance, the young maid, with her wheat-coloured hair, cinnamon-coloured eyes, and a scattering of light freckles on her nose, had captured the heart of the manager. But instead of inviting Michelle on a date, getting rejected, and calming down, the slippery man began to pressure the girl through his high position. He constantly hinted at Michelle, tried to hug her whenever possible, and stroked her back or knee. Once he even slapped her below the belt, accompanied by an indecent remark about the length of her uniform skirt. The girl learned to endure such treatment and the attention of the manager. What else could she do? Hit him in his impudent, annoying face and then count pennies? No, Michelle was afraid of losing her job. And even though being a maid was not the most prestigious profession, she didn't want to work as a cashier for a salary 3 times lower. She wanted to please her little brother with modern toys and buy her grandmother a new dress. Furthermore, Michelle was afraid of being judged by her colleagues if she publicized the situation. Because, as usual, how does it go? The man is not to blame for anything. If a man hits on a woman, it means she's guilty of it and has apparently shown her easy availability. Once Michelle tried to cool the boss's ardor. In response to a crude hint that he wanted to keep Michelle after work and check whether she had made the bed in the hotel's luxury suite properly, the girl said, "Mr. Miller, I'm not interested in that. I have no time or desire for a relationship." "But I'm not offering you a relationship," the man replied, not at all flustered. "We're adults, Michelle, and I would like to have a close colleague. Believe me, it's good for you too. Who knows, maybe the administrator's position will soon become available. I'll help you. Or are you planning to clean the toilets forever?" "No, thank you. I'll achieve everything on my own," she said. "You're foolish, Michelle. Soon you'll understand that everything in the world is for sale. It's just a matter of price." Sometimes the man got angry when the girl ignored him. Then trouble would descend on Michelle like an abundance. One time he'd give her a ticket for some invisible speck of dust in her room that she'd wiped clean, and the next time he'd scold her so that the whole hotel would be awake. The last time Michelle was scolded in front of the entire staff for her kind treatment of a guest. He accused her of flirting with him. Of course, nothing of the sort had happened, but it was useless to argue with the manager. Lately, Greg Miller had been keeping an eye on the girl's schedule, carefully checking to make sure she doesn't leave work early or show up late. And he threatened to fire her all the time. Fortunately, the evil manager was hardly the only fly in the ointment. Well, except for heavy carts with chemicals and the need to perfectly make other people's beds in 2 minutes, like in the army. Hurriedly changing and trying to ignore the fact that Greg's predatory gaze was crawling on her back like a spider, the girl rushed out of the room. She was immediately seized by the routine of work, and time flew by swiftly. She didn't have time to look back when it was time for lunch. The staff was also fed deliciously here. Soup, main course, and coffee, as it should be. The girl was finishing her lunch when she was called. "Michelle, the receptionist called, peering into the kitchen. "Will you check how the new girl cleaned up around the open pool? There was a party there yesterday, and I have to meet a guest now. It's getting sunny outside, and people might go to relax and find something inappropriate over there." "No problem," Michelle nodded. There were 2 pools at the hotel, an outdoor one and an indoor one. Yesterday there was a Hawaiian-themed party at the first one. Happy guests left behind bright leis, as well as half coconut and pineapple shells, which were used as cocktails. Approaching the pool, Michelle noticed that the sun was indeed reluctantly appearing in the sky. The weather in their area was changeable. The girl managed to go outside, looking for traces of revelry, when she heard a strange sound. She turned in its direction at the moment when a little boy had already approached the edge of the pool. He was on his knees, reaching for something drifting in the water. Michelle realized that the Hawaiian lei made of red flowers lying on the water had attracted the kid. The girl hurried to the child and was about to shout to him that it was dangerous, but she didn't have time. Before her eyes, the boy slid on his knees along the wet edge of the pool and fell into it, splashing water around. "Oh my goodness!" the girl screamed, seeing such a frightening sight. Without hesitation, and with seconds ticking away, Michelle ran towards the child. When she reached the edge of the pool, where the boy was, she plunged into the water. The girl struggled to pull him out of the water. Her hands were shaking, either from the weight or from tension and fear, and she didn't listen to her. When Michelle got out of the water and put her ear to the child's chest, she realized with horror, he's not breathing. She frantically tried to figure out what to do. She started shouting for help, but people could be drawn to the pool only by the sun and music, not by someone else's screams. The lessons on first aid for drowning seemed like a thing of the past. She didn't understand what to do. Should she run for help? But time was probably running out. The girl pulled herself together and, trying to stop the sobs that were bursting out of her chest, began pressing on the boy's chest, pumping water out of his lungs. Then Michelle started using artificial respiration. She forgot about everything, focusing only on one thing, saving the child's life. And the miracle that the girl had prayed for inside herself happened. The boy began to spit out water. The child's eyes opened, clear and blue as the sky. He looked at the girl in fright. Coming to his senses, the boy began to breathe spasmodically, and then he cried loudly. Michelle, to her shame, also burst into tears, only from joy and relief. "It's okay now, it's okay now," she said through her own tears, hugging and trying to calm the child. The ambulance called by the staff arrived quickly. The child was taken to the hospital, but for Michelle, who had not yet recovered from the shock, the terrible surprises did not end there. "What is this?" Greg burst into the staff lounge, breathing fury. Michelle trembled with fear when she saw the manager, even though the workday had ended and she was already in her own clothes. Trying to calm down, she sipped the chamomile and lemon balm tea that her friend, the bartender, had kindly prepared for her. "Is something wrong, Mr. Miller?" the girl asked, clasping her fingers tightly around the cup. "Where are you going, Michelle?" "Home? The workday is over," Michelle replied. "Oh, really? And do you think you did a good job? Why do I pay you, Michelle? To be told off for some brat who wanders around all over the place?" The girl understood the reason for her boss's anger. The owner of the entire hotel chain, Mr. Keshawarz, had decided to visit them and check the staff's work on this very day, when a tragedy had almost occurred at the hotel. And judging by what the observant Claire had overheard, he was very unhappy with how things were going in his hotel. He rebuked the manager for his careless attitude towards work, including towards the pool, where staff were supposed to be present. But Greg had occupied everyone with his personal orders. Michelle did not feel sorry for the manager, nor did she feel any joy. She felt a strange emptiness from the stress she had just experienced. "I know you're upset, but I'm done with work and I'm going home," Michelle calmly replied. "And what I didn't have time for, The girls let me know. They'll clean up the rest of the 3rd floor themselves." "And who said you could give orders?" "I didn't finish my job in time because the paramedics wouldn't let me." Michelle began to justify herself, but the man didn't want to listen to her. He was angry, so he decided to take it out on Michelle. "You know what? I'm tired of your stubborn behavior," he said unexpectedly, looming over the girl and lowering his tone. "I'm so tired of it that I'm itching to sign an order to fire you." "Why?" protested the girl. "Because I saved a child?" "Quiet," he said, unpleasantly patting the girl's knee. "You know, I'll give you one more chance." The girl irritably pushed his hand away. "No, thank you," she said through her teeth. "Are you certain?" Greg snorted. "And what if we say the boy fell because of you? Maybe it was you who pushed him. After all, there was only one of you there. You're smart, of course, for ultimately saving him, but you have no idea how influential his father is." "Are you blackmailing me?" "Oh, of course not. How could you say that?" "I'm just thinking," he said, grinning. "And I offer you the most reasonable way out of our situation. You're not a stupid girl, and you'll make the right choice. Won't you?" Michelle nodded decisively. She put the half-empty cup on the table. Unfortunately, the drink no longer tasted good. Standing up, the girl looked directly into the manager's eyes. "Fire me, then," she threw at him. "I won't come to work tomorrow." Mr. Keshawarz was a widower and a single father who owned a chain of hotels. He was doing very well in his business, but being the only parent was harder for him than his work. Of course, he tried to give his child the best of everything, but Alan was an unruly 4-year-old boy, as expected, and today the boy ran away from his nanny. "Why did you do that, Sonny? Why did you run away from the nanny?" The father gently scolded his son, sitting by his bed in the hospital room. "You scared me." "I'm sorry, Daddy," the boy said, blinking with sincere disappointment as he looked at his father. "I ran away from Nanny because I wanted to have an adventure, like real pirates, and there was a pool there." "Well, you've got plenty of adventure," the father smirked, stroking the boy's unruly head with his big palm. "And where's Mum? Will she come see me?" the boy suddenly asked. The man stared at his son with an almost frightened look. "Sweetheart, I've already explained to you. Your mum is in heaven." "But she saved me. She pulled me out of the water. I saw her. She hugged me, Daddy," the child insisted, looking at his father with a serious expression beyond his years. "I felt so good." At that moment, Mr. Keshawarz remembered that it was a woman who had saved his son. In the midst of everything, he had forgotten about her. When he was told the terrible news about his son, Mr. Keshawarz almost turned grey. Just 3 years ago, Mr. Keshawarz lost his wife and was terrified of losing his son. He had no time for gratitude or politeness. However, the doctors said that if it hadn't been for that woman, they wouldn't have been able to save Alan. The man made a mental note that he must express his endless gratitude to the woman and buy her something. Flowers or chocolates, perhaps. It had been a long time since he had spoken to a woman. He had even lost the skill. Besides his business and Alan, he had no time for anything else. Said and done. The next morning, without delay, Mr. Keshawarz arrived at the hotel. He was met by Kate, the receptionist, who was always smiling and friendly. "Good morning, Mr. Keshawarz," the girl beamed. "Good morning, Kate. Could you please tell me if the girl who helped my son by the pool yesterday is working today, and who is she?" Kate seemed embarrassed and looked away. "Unfortunately, Michelle was fired," she said. "She was a maid, but she doesn't work here anymore." "Why?" Mr. Keshawarz was taken aback. Wasn't the worker entitled to a bonus, a reward, a vacation or something else for saving a drowning child? They couldn't have fired her, could they? "I don't know." Kate lied blatantly, and then, as if she had made up her mind, she added, "Ask Mr. Miller." And here, too, that damn Greg Miller is involved, thought Mr. Keshawarz. He really didn't like the manager's work. Mr. Keshawarz had only been in this hotel for a week, and he had noticed many shortcomings, gaps, and even dubious machinations. And all these threads led to the slippery manager. But Mr. Keshawaz didn't like to jump to conclusions. Instead, he asked for the security camera recordings. And 15 minutes later, Mr. Keshawaz saw the bravery of the girl who, on the video, seemed very young and fragile, but saved his son. After watching, Mr. Keshawaz called Greg to his office. Greg, in response to a straight answer about why the girl was fired, began to twist. Finally, he said it was her decision. "This girl is very eccentric," he began to tell Mr. Keshawaz about Michelle. "She has been wanting to leave for a long time. Should I keep her by force?" But Mr. Keshawaz was sure that something was fishy here. That evening, taking a bouquet of flowers and a box of expensive chocolates, the man went to the address indicated in the former employee's resume. A young and beautiful girl in a blue dress opened the door for him. Mr. Keshawaz was taken aback when he saw her and realized what his son had in mind. The girl was subtly similar to his dead wife. "Who are you?" asked the young woman, surprised. Behind her, an elderly woman and a little boy appeared, the same age as Alan. "To see you," Mr. Keshawaz replied.
Oh, my goodness! Did you come to propose to my granddaughter?"
the old woman exclaimed, clapping her hands in joy.
"Grandma!"
The girl blushed deeply and shook her head reproachfully. Mr. Keshawaz just laughed, noting that in his suit and with such a gentleman's set he did look like a groom. But the most important thing was that the grandmother was right, because Mr. Keshawaz and Michelle got married a year later after he proposed to her. But that first evening, over a cup of tea, Michelle told Mr. Keshawaz why she had declined the job at the hotel. Mr. Keshawaz began an investigation, finding many victims of Greg Miller. The manager was fired. Michelle's dream also came true. She had her own family hotel by the sea, a cozy place for a peaceful rest and a happy life, which her husband gave her. She did not live there, but in a cozy house, with her grandmother, younger brother, husband, and son Alan, who immediately recognized her as his mother and Kevin as his brother. They were all so close, as if they had lived together all their lives. And soon she and Mr. Keshawaz were expecting a daughter, and they knew for sure that there would be no happier child.